Invocation. Book of Street Gabriel as rehearsed by Street Michael to Mankind. Chapter 110. Sora. In the name of God, the gracious, the merciful, one. When there comes God's victory and conquest, two, and you see the people entering God's religion in multitudes, three, then celebrate the praise of your Lord and seek His forgiveness. He is the acceptor of repentance. AI sci-fi novel. Text and video including prompts OpenAI, ChatGPT, Pro GPT 5. Text-to-speech Minimax Hallow AI, stock voice Sri Lankan Brahmin, English. Video compilation with Photoplay mobile app. Chapter 2. Ghost Hand. They scheduled the second session for late afternoon, the hour when hospitals remember they are buildings and not tides. The light in the pulse room went honeyed along the baseboards. Dr. Ibarra stood with a tablet hugged to her chest, reading the consent addendum as if it were a prayer she'd translated herself. Minor protocol change, she said. We'll test for cross-user resonance. If anything feels not you, say so. Define not me, Lennox said, rolling his sleeve to reveal the healed ladder of skin where his fingers used to be. You'll know, she said. It will arrive like a memory that isn't yours. Seth settled the Hallow on his hairline. The band recognized him with a warm tick, like a cat bumping a knee. He and Lennox did the calibration left divided by right, open divided by close, imagine divided by hold, and the interface drew its little constellations. The rhythms felt cleaner today, like a piano freshly tuned. Read only first, Ibarra said. Then we cue paired rights with a temporal offset. Temporal offset, Lennox repeated, grinning. You mean a delay? I mean I need to sound like I studied, she said, and the room loosened by a notch. They started with linen again. Seth dragged his finger along the tablet. The haptic sleeve ghosted the texture up Lennox's forearm. Lennox shut his eyes without being told. His shoulders dropped. He said nothing, but the EMG signal said home again in its own spiky cursive. Okay, Ibarra murmured. Now we write to Seth at time 0, and if there's resonance in Lennox, it should appear after a randomized delay. Don't search for it, she added. Searching makes phantoms. Seth nodded. He braced with the quiet superstition he refused to call a prayer. The band breathed. A candle-warm brush bloomed where his thumb believed it ended. The feeling was private and precise. Across the glass, Lennox's eyelids flickered. He raised his arm 1 inch, paused, frowned. Anything? Ibarra asked. Maybe. He shook his head. It's like when you stand up too fast and the world goes black at the edges, but for my hand. Again, she said. They repeated the brush. This time Lennox jerked as if his elbow had a secret. He opened his eyes and stared at the missing fingers as if they were hiding behind the air, then laughed, embarrassed. Sorry, it's nothing. It's something, Seth said softly. Ibarra set the tablet on the cart, changed the parameter, and the curve of the room shifted. We'll try a different channel, she said. Micro shear, distal. On the screen, the stimulation pattern rotated like a quilt square. Seth felt the faintest sand grain slide, truthful enough to fool a blindfold. 2 heartbeats later, Lennox's shoulders twitched. He touched his forearm with his other hand and found only skin. Describe it, Ibarra said. Like a zipper, but not loud. Half a zipper. He winced at his own words. Look, I know that sounds stupid. Texture has bad language, Seth said. We forgive it. They ran brass, rain, slate. The resonance never arrived on command. It arrived sideways, like a cat deciding your furniture after all. Sometimes nothing. Sometimes a vague pressure that could have been wish. Twice, a clean hit, Lennox naming a thing Seth had not said aloud. By the third clean hit, Ibarra's posture changed. She didn't move, exactly, but the kind of stillness around her altered, as if a hunter wind had changed direction. She toggled the internal clock to a new random delay and layered a hair-thin vestibular nudge into the right. Seth felt the world tilt a fraction toward his right shoulder. No nausea, just a suggestion that gravity had negotiated a new clause. Lennox flinched. His left foot shifted. He grabbed the chair. "Okay," he said. "Okay, that wasn't mine." Ibarra looked pleased and worried in equal parts. "Noted," she said. "Seth?" 15 to 20 milliseconds before him, he said, and then realized how arrogant that sounded. "Sorry, I don't know exactly, but I felt it clean." "Logs agree," she said. They took a break. The nurse brought paper cups of coffee that tasted like the idea of coffee. Lennox drank his like medicine. "I had a dream after last time," he said through the glass, voice half shy, half dare. "I was tying my boots. I could feel the lace bite. Woke up and wanted to laugh and kill someone at the same time." "That's a common stage," Ibarra said. "The anger says you're finally near enough to want. It's the last guard dog at the door. Do you have a pamphlet for that too?" He smiled to make the bite kinder. "No pamphlet," she said. "Just a promise I'll walk you to the door and back as many times as it takes." Seth watched them with an ache he couldn't file. He remembered his grandmother's proverb, "What is tied by hand is untied by hand," and wondered which hand did the tying here. "Round two," Ibarra said, business returning to her bones. "We'll test paired intent. Seth, imagine a reach. Lennox, keep your arm still." He closed his eyes. He pictured the smooth stone again, then abandoned it for something leaner, the feel of a railing at shoulder height, the cold oval of it, the slight stick. He imagined reaching without moving. The band read the motor imagery like a rumor and whispered back a counter-rumor in his sensory map. "You're gripping it. Yes, you are." Across the glass, Lennox inhaled sharply and then laughed a small, incredulous bark that startled itself. "Rail," he said, "like on a bus, right?" Seth opened his eyes. "Right. Okay," Ibarra said quietly. "Now reverse. Lennox, you intend. Seth, be a wall." Lennox stared at his forearm the way men stare at old photographs, then nodded and let his eyelids fall. The room fell into that tense silence good labs know, the silence of many ears pretending to be one. Seconds passed, then a little more. Seth felt nothing except his own pulse in his lip where he'd bitten it earlier. He was about to apologize to the air for wanting too much when something feathered the edge of his palm, a trace, a half-laugh of touch, so light he might have denied it if denial didn't feel suddenly childish. He didn't speak. Ibarra didn't either. The log timestamp took the note no one said aloud. "Again," Lennox whispered, not opening his eyes. They repeated the reach. The second time, Seth felt it as the negative of a pressure like where a ring used to be. It arrived not on his skin, but inside his map of his skin, which was worse and therefore better. It made his jaw ache and his eyes sting. Ibarra broke the spell with the gentlest possible incision. "We're cutting there," she said. "We have what we came for." "Have we?" Lennox asked. "Because I have." He fluttered his working hand, searching for a noun he could be seen using in a public room. "A thing." "Name it," she said. He shook his head. "If I say it out loud, it goes dumb. Let me keep it buzzing for a bit." They moved to debrief protocols, tissue temperature, thermal budget, subjective fatigue. The room compiled the day into numbers. Seth answered in neat, clinical sentences because neat sentences were how he kept from confessing that a stranger's intention had brushed his palm from across a pane of glass, and it had felt like a kindness so exquisite it was almost rude. When the nurse stepped out, Ibarra leaned an elbow on the cart and dropped her voice. "We'll need the board," she said. "I figured," Seth said. "She'll panic," Lennox said, meaning the hospital lawyer whose bracelets always clicked at the bad parts. "Maybe," Ibarra said. "Or she'll do her job and make sure we name the thing we're actually doing." "And what are we actually doing?" Seth asked. "Teaching two brains to share a metaphor," she said. "After that it gets religious." They looked at one another and then away, as if they'd said something indecent in church. The band on Seth's head shifted minutely. He had forgotten it was there. He took it off, and the room's edges went a fraction less tender. On their way out, Lennox hovered in the doorway. He lifted his residual hand in the same aquarium gesture as yesterday. Seth lifted his, too. This time the glass felt simply like glass. Cool, duty-bound, exactly itself. "Hey," Lennox said, voice catching on some private snag. "If you can do it again tomorrow, I'd like that." "We'll do it," Seth said. "There's a word for what you did today," Lennox said, not quite meeting his eyes. "Giving me back a hand I don't have. That's thievery." "From who?" Seth asked. Lennox gave the smallest shrug. "From whatever keeps the door shut." In the hall, Ibarra walked as if the floor were a ledger she meant to balance. "If the resonance is real, it won't stay in hands," she said. "Touch is just the cleanest proof." "What next, then?" Seth asked. "Balance," she said. "Voice. Maybe grief." He thought of the tilt she'd written into him, the way Lennox's foot had answered a gravity that wasn't there. He thought about the texture dream, the bus rail, the ring that wasn't. He remembered. Set again the breaker and the guard. He wondered which role the machine wanted, and which role he did. Outside, the sky had the flat, breathless blue of a screen without a signal. He checked his phone and found 3 emails from the ethics board, one from a journalist he'd never heard of, and a message from his mother with a photo of Molokia in a clay bowl. "Eat," she'd written. "You look thin in my mind." He typed, "Busy. Good busy. I'll call after rounds," and didn't send it. He watched the unsent words sit in the bar like a patient in a waiting room, hands folded, trying to be brave. Back in the pulse room, the machines idled in low registers. On the cart, the last stimulation pattern sat, paused a little quilt square, waiting for hands. On the worksheet, Ibarra had written 2 words she would not show the lawyer yet. Ghost hand. It was not a diagnosis or a goal. It was the name of the corridor that had opened the not quite hallway through a barrier and a language. By evening, the corridor would be wider. By winter, it would have traffic. Chapter 3. Sleep Songs. The overnight wing went quiet, the way deserts go quiet, by revealing how much noise you were carrying. The day staff thinned to silhouettes on wheels. The vending machines clicked into their lonely metronomes. In the pulse room, the Hallow sat on the cart like a moon torn from its orbit and told to behave. "Baseline first," Dr. Ibarra said. 10 minutes, eyes closed, normal breath. Then we start the lullaby. "Lullaby," Seth repeated, trying not to like the word. He had eaten the molokia his mother texted him a photograph of, or a cafeteria approximation of it, greens too timid, rice too loud. He felt steady in the way a boat tied at 2 posts feels steady.